Syria has joined China's Belt and Road Initiative, which is also known as the New Silk Road. This is really big. This is really very significant news because Syria, as you guys know, has been, under terrible attack for 10 years. There's been a war on Syria, and Syria's destroyed. It needs reconstruction. Syria is also under brutal U.S. sanctions under the Caesar Act. So just by joining the Belt and Road Initiative, this means China is going to be involved in Syria's reconstruction. And that's very important at the moment. And it's funny how the media report about it. They say that this has been done, that Syria has joined China's Belt and Road Initiative in defiance of U.S. sanctions. Like, basically what they're saying is, how dare China not succumb and bend over backwards to obey U.S. sanctions, like as if U.S. sanctions are international law. U.S. sanctions are illegal. They're unilateral, punitive measures. They're completely illegal. And well done to China for not, succumbing to this pressure, which just hurts Syrian civilians. Bashar al-Assad, the powerful elites in Syria, the government, they're not hurt by sanctions. It's the Syrian civilian population who are hurt the most. It's always like that. It's the same thing in Venezuela. It's the same thing everywhere. So when they impose these sanctions, they know what they're doing. And Syria is starving. Syria needs to be rebuilt. And the other really significant reason for this is the Belt and Road Initiative, or as it's called, the New Silk Road. It's called the New Silk Road because in ancient times there was a commercial route called the Silk Road, right? Because of the silk that would come from China. So this is a map, right, of the ancient Silk Road, and note specifically how it would go from China and it will go all the way to Syria. So the original Silk Road passed through Syria, and specifically two cities. So the ancient city of Aleppo, which is to this day, it's Syria's biggest city. It's not the capital, but it's the economic center of Syria. And the other city is Palmyra, or we call it Tedmur. Palmyra is beautiful. This is Palmyra, right? So I've been there as a child, and this place is thousands of years old. It's an incredible place. There's it used to be ruled at one time by Queen Zenobia, and the Romans were here too. There's an amphitheater, I should say, that was built by the Romans. It's still there. Really a special city. Unfortunately, this gate here was blown up by ISIS, which again shows you, it's a crime, honestly, against human history and human heritage to what they've done here. This is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and it's just priceless history, And of course, these groups, these savage terrorist groups that were brought about by Western, aggression. They invaded Iraq, they helped create ISIS, and then they do things like this. And a lot of things have been stolen from Syria. Just like Iraq, they've stolen archaeological things from archaeological digs. They've stolen historical artifacts and sold this on the black market. It's really heartbreaking. But it's good that Syria will be a part of the New Silk Road. It has to be. It was part of the original one. And like I said, it's very good for Syria because right now, inflation is horrific. The devaluation of the Syrian pound, the lira, it's plummeted. Like my cousins who are still there, some of them, they told me, how there's no bread. You got to wait hours in line just to get bread, and you get one bag. There's no gas, there's no fuel. So, you get in your car to go to the gas station. You wait for 2 days sometimes just to fill up the tank. It's really ironic how they talk about socialist countries. In the West, they say socialist countries have bread lines. Syria didn't have bread lines. That was created by the United States. The bread lines in Venezuela, in Cuba, in Syria, this is an effect of U.S. attack, of U.S. sanctions. That's not something inherent to these countries. So that's a goddamn lie. Syria was self-sufficient in wheat. Doesn't mean it was perfect. Doesn't mean it didn't have problems. But when you go and you bomb a country and you finance Al-Qaeda to destroy the country and overthrow the government, and you bomb the country to bits and impose sanctions on it, of course it's going to have effects like that. Of course the economy is going to be ruined. And then you're going to point to that and say that the government there did that? No, it didn't. I'm a witness to that. So Syria was getting better and better every year. I've seen that with my own eyes. No one in the world can tell me otherwise. It's a goddamn lie. And, every year Syria was getting better and better, and they destroyed it. They set it back God knows how many years. That's the West that did that, and its allies, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, Israel, they're responsible for that. And it's good that Syria will join the Belt and Road Initiative. Guess who's also joined it? Cuba. So this was a few days ago. A few weeks ago, December 27th, I posted it. Cuba signed the go-ahead in China's Belt and Road Initiative. And it's important to understand that Cuba was already officially, technically part of the Belt and Road Initiative. What they signed here was a cooperation plan, okay, for joint promotion of the New Silk Road. So basically, it's setting things into motion, getting started, laying out what's going to be invested in. China is going to invest in telecommunications, infrastructure, education, tourism, you name it. And with Syria, they signed a memorandum of understanding just a few days ago in Syria. Here, there's a picture where they signed this in Damascus, entering Syria into the Belt and Road Initiative, right? And I really think it's important to outline the difference between China and the United States. Look at the result of the road we've been taken down on. We're in 2022. Look at where Syria is now because of Western intervention, Western regime change. And look what that's brought Syria. Look what it's brought Iraq. Look what it's brought Cuba. Look what it's brought Venezuela, the effect of sanctions. And look what China's trying to do. China is trying to come in and help these countries get back on their feet, right? So with Iran also joined the Belt and Road Initiative a few months ago, and we covered that here. Iran can't offload its oil because Donald Trump quit the nuclear deal. He put sanctions on Iran. Iran can't sell oil on the global markets anymore. So it has a lot of oil and nowhere to take it. So China comes in and says, well, you give us the oil because we need oil. We have energy needs. And in exchange, we'll build you infrastructure, which you also need. So it's a mutually beneficial relationship. When the U.S. comes to other countries and invades them, there is no mutual benefit here. There's the imperialist, the colonizer, and the colonized. Syrians don't get shit. Iraqis don't get shit, right? Venezuelans don't get shit. They get sanctions. They get starvation. They get misery imposed on them. That's what they get. And why? Because the U.S. wants them to play ball. They want to take over their markets with their corporations. They want to control them with the international banking system. These are countries that don't have debt. Syria does not have debt. And so that they need ways to control these countries. And when they come with their IMF, with the World Bank, and these institutions to help developing countries, they're not helping them. They're trapping them in debt to then control their politics. And then people say, they make this accusation about China, to say China, it's a debt trap. No, it's not. It's not a debt trap. This is a mutually beneficial decision that is taken by both countries. Okay? It's not imposed on the other country. China does not invade Syria until it signed this memorandum of understanding. They don't order Syria to join whatever plan they have for them. The United States invades with guns, tanks, kills people, and imposes its will. Two completely fucking different things. Anyone who is comparing those two is a fucking numbskull. There is no comparison whatsoever. This is some bullshit Western propaganda to smear China because the Western model has been violence, aggression, colonialism for centuries. That's why we're at a point where you have developing countries and developed. Why are those countries developed? Because they stole all the shit. They stole the resources, the humans, they enslaved people. This is centuries and centuries of the same practice, and now they just renamed it. It's still neocolonialism. But they can't tolerate another system. They don't like competition, right? They call themselves capitalists, but they don't like actually competition. They want to monopolize everything and on an international scale as well. So they can't tolerate China doing good things in agreement, not imposing, agreeing to do something with other countries. They don't want that. They want to control the other countries. And that's not speculation. It's a fact. There are U.S. troops in these countries that have been invaded and pillaged and destroyed. So this is a different model. And people don't like that. Some of them, they want to smear China. They want to make up. Again, we're not saying China is perfect. No country is perfect. But these are two different models. I'm sorry. They're completely different. And don't come here and tell me that China debt traps people like the IMF or the World Bank. That's bullshit. Don't tell me that China comes and imposes its will on developing countries like the US or France does. These companies, these multinationals, the French ones, British ones, they're still in the same countries that they colonized, that the French and British colonized, plundering their resources. They just do it under a different label now. They just do it under a company instead of, the government doing it. But in the end, what's happening? There's an imbalance of wealth. You have people in the country, let's take Niger, for example, or Niger. Niger has uranium. Do you think they're getting money from that uranium, which France extracts? Fuck no. They're getting screwed, and the French take the lion's share, and they give them pennies. This is just one example. So it's incomparable. It's incomparable. This is just nonsense smears that they want to say against China. And honestly, we've seen what the US, the Western model does. We've seen, we're living through it right now. It doesn't look good. Maybe it's time to try something else. So just from an economic standpoint, a geopolitical standpoint, it's good that Syria is in the Belt and Road Initiative, but also historically, I really want you to, I really hope people can appreciate the historical importance of this, because these are countries that have been trading with each other for thousands of years. The United States didn't even exist back then, right? When China and Iran, they were trading with each other. When China and the whole Silk Road, traveling through all of Asia, going through Palmyra, through Aleppo, this is historical. This is like human. This is our human heritage, So it's very important. It's very good to see that. And Syria, is really in dire need of reconstruction. And I can imagine that there are, the Biden administration is just continuing what Trump did. They know Syria is trying to rebuild. They don't want Syria to rebuild. They want people in Syria to starve. They want them to live under sanctions. And the whole idea of the Caesar Act is that if you interact with the Syrian government, and all sanctions work like this in general, right? But the idea is that if you do any kind of business, even if it's helping to reconstruct Syria, if you interact with the Syrian government, you could be fined or jailed by the US, right? And so that's how they scare people away and how they isolate countries. And they're trying to do that with Syria. And it's good that Russia and China are like, screw you. Iran as well, screw you. We're not going to follow your bullshit. And you really see the world transitioning into a multipolar world, right? This US hegemony it's crumbling. It's crumbling, and that's why they resort to threats, military threats with AUKUS, trying to antagonize China, and now with this Ukraine and Russia. That's why. And they lost the war in Syria. They failed to overthrow the Syrian government with Al-Qaeda and all their little minions and their proxies. So they're doing a scorched earth policy now. Let's burn Syria to the ground, make sure everyone starves, cut Syria off, make sure that the oil is not accessible, which the U.S. is stealing, as you remember. They're still plundering that. Make sure no one can invest in Syria. And China's saying, no, that's not happening. And Cuba's the same thing, right? I mentioned Cuba. Cuba's been under embargo, U.S. embargo, for 60 years. And they've done, commendable, remarkable things. Cuba made its own vaccine. Cuba has doctors that it sends overseas to help people. Cuba just sent a bunch of vaccines to Syria, right? They sent them a vaccine shipment. That's the difference. The United States kills people in Syria by cutting off medicine, cutting off medical supplies, cutting off food. And Cuba itself, I told you, 60 years under U.S. embargo, Cuba is itself in need, and it goes and helps Syria. Same thing with Iran. Iran is under sanctions. It goes and helps Syria. It sends fuel. Do you see the difference in mentality here? Do you see the difference? The countries that are themselves in need and need help go and help the other ones. That's, it's remarkable. It really is.